As someone whose channel has covered both Ashes of Creation and the Riot MMO, I have found it interesting how there is already a rivalry seemingly forming between these two MMOs by the fan bases. Historically, the MMO tribalism was reserved for released MMOs. Now it even exists with MMOs that are years from release, and one that is so early in development we don't even know the name of it yet. While we don't know much about the Riot MMO yet, we have been able to piece together some kind of picture of what they might be going for. Ashes of Creation might be a long ways from release still, but with that game we have an extensive wiki and a really good idea of what the core of the game is about. And when you start to compare and contrast the two games and their potential target audiences, to me the two MMOs likely end up being in stark contrast to one another. In the MMO genre, the variation that can exist between two different games can be enormous. The stark contrast between the two games to me is much bigger than what one might see in other genres. And I get the feeling that is exactly what we might end up seeing with Ashes of Creation and the Riot MMO. The biggest piece of evidence that supports this idea to me is that Greg Street has said multiple times that with the Riot MMO they are not aiming to be a niche product. They are looking to make an MMO that has mass appeal, appeals to casuals and those that don't have as much time to play, respects players' time, and is very beginner friendly. And if they are going for mass appeal, it makes sense to look what has worked historically in terms of mass appeal in this genre. The MMOs that have achieved the most in terms of player numbers were the ones that were heavily theme park instance MMOs similar to World of Warcraft. Opt-in world PvP, and plenty of vertical progression that gets reset every expansion to continually give players new things to strive for. That is the formula that has worked the best in this genre for mass appeal. That is also Riot's modus operandi as a company when they created games like League of Legends and Valorant. They take what works in a genre, they refine it, polish it, make it very user-friendly and easy to get into. Then they add a few wrinkles to make it their own, and historically this has worked for them to have a massive amount of success as a company. Couple that piece of evidence with Greg Street's background as the lead developer of World of Warcraft, and many on his team also having World of Warcraft development experience, I suspect the Riot MMO might borrow heavily from WoW while still finding a way to have its own identity. Contrast what I am projecting the Riot MMO to potentially be with what we know about Ashes of Creation. We know that Ashes of Creation is a game that is fundamentally very different from what we have seen be prevalent in the genre for the last 20 years. It more closely resembles MMOs like ArcheAge and very old-school MMOs like Lineage 2. It is a system that has PvP always on in the open world, albeit with a very harsh punishment system for those that gank the unwilling. But still, risk-reward in the open world will be very present. And the open world is an ever-changing place that matters, with very little instancing and all the hardest content being in the open world. This is very much different from the standard WoW model of MMO where all the hardest content is locked away in instances. Steven Shreve has stated multiple times that participation trophies and everyone getting rewarded for just logging into the game will not be a feature of this game. Earning high-end gear or a player freehold will be a monumental achievement, and not every player will have these things. This is definitely an MMO where the hardcore player can get ahead of the casual players. This is less so an option in the current generation of MMOs with time gating and catch-up mechanics. The fundamental differences are stark when looking at these two games. With that in mind, I am actually interested in both games. Why would I be interested in two very different games? Because for me as a PvPer, I like both open world and instanced PvP. To me, we haven't had a good open world PvP game since Warhammer Online. Guild Wars 2 and ESO had some decent open world PvP, but they both felt tacked on and were lacking in many respects. Ashes of Creation, to me, has the potential to be the best open world PvP MMO we have ever seen, at least in the modern era. But I also do like instanced PvP, and I don't think Ashes of Creation arenas will be very good, but I do think the Riot MMO has the potential to have incredible arena PvP considering their track record in esports. So that is what has me excited about that MMO. And I certainly want both MMOs to succeed. The strange tribalism that has already developed between the two fan bases is odd to me. And as an MMO fan, the more MMOs that succeed, the better off the genre will be long term. So I am rooting for both to succeed and will continue to cover both going forward as new information comes in. With that, if you liked the video, consider subscribing and I will see you in the next video.